Hey everyone, have you ever wondered how your retirement income stacks up against other retirees? Well, in this video, I want to break down why knowing what other retirees earn actually matters, not for comparison in a measuring contest, but to help you plan better, make smarter financial decisions, and create a retirement that works for you. But I'm not just going to stop at the usual stats. We're going to go a little deeper here. We're going to look at the average retirement income as a percentage of pre-retirement earnings, and more importantly, where that income actually comes from. How much comes from Social Security? How much comes from investments, pensions, or other sources? But before we get into the numbers, I can't tell you how excited I am about launching a brand new YouTube channel. And at the end of today's video, I'm going to share all the details, so be sure to stick around for that. Now let's get back to the numbers real quick. According to the last census report, the average income for individuals over the age of 65 was $50,290. But for someone trying to benchmark where they land against that number, that average really doesn't help that much. It's kind of like talking about the average temperature in the U.S. at 57 degrees, but that doesn't mean that it feels the same in Miami as it does in Minneapolis. So to really get into the data and figure out what the real average is among people who earn the same range that you did, you have to dive a little deeper. And thankfully, JP Morgan has this data in their latest Guide to Retirement. But that does bring up an important question. And that is, why does it even matter what other retirees earned? After all, retirement is your own, so why worry about anyone else? Well, it's not about competition. It's about context, and knowing what others live on matters for a few reasons. First, it's going to let you benchmark your readiness. Are you on track? Are you over-saving? Or are you at risk of running short? And it does let you set realistic expectations. Does your income align with the lifestyle you envision? And it lets you see how others structure income from Social Security, investments, and pensions. So this is not about comparing. It's about making informed decisions based on data from people who are already on the road that you're going to be traveling soon. So when we look at JP Morgan's data, they break retirees into different income groups based on what they earned before retirement. They start with those making $30,000 a year and go up in steps. So $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, all the way up to $100,000. Then they jump to $125,000, $150,000, $175,000, $200,000, and then finally $250,000 and $300,000. And again, this is what they earned before retirement, not what they're living on in retirement. Now, in just a moment, we'll get into how much income these groups actually need in retirement. But first, it's really interesting to see where their retirement income comes from. For those with lower pre-retirement earnings, Social Security makes up the majority of their income. So for example, if someone earned $30,000 a year before retiring, about 74% of their income in retirement comes from Social Security, with only about 26% coming from personal savings. But as pre-retirement income increases, Social Security starts to play a smaller role. And at the very top end, someone who made $300,000 before retiring, Social Security makes up just 22% of their retirement income. Now that's interesting data, and there's a whole series of rabbit trails that I could go down here, and while I was compiling this data, I did get a little deep into this, and I had to get refocused and say what we're here to talk about is how much income is needed in retirement. So that's what I want to get refocused on now and not get into some of those details. So in the JP Morgan research, they break down the income need by the same income groups we looked at earlier, starting with the $30,000 and going all the way up to $300,000. Now, to be clear, this is the amount of income someone earned while they were working before they retired. And the amount they need after retirement is considered the replacement rate. That's simply the percentage of pre-retirement income needed to maintain the same standard of living in retirement as someone had before retirement. And the data is interesting here. At the lower end of these pre-retirement incomes, the income need didn't go down much at all in retirement. So a person with $30,000 in pre-retirement earnings still needed 98% of that in retirement. But as the pre-retirement numbers go up, the percentage of the income need in retirement starts to go down. So for someone who earned $100,000, they would still need about 86% in retirement. And for someone that was all the way at the top end of the scale that they measured, 300,000, the replacement rate would be 72%. So if you look at the data, it's really interesting that higher earners actually need a lower replacement rate in retirement. But, when you break it down, it does make a lot of sense. First, higher earners tend to save more during their working years, so a smaller portion of their income is actually going towards daily expenses that they're going to have to replace in retirement. And then taxes also play a big role, since taxable income often drops in retirement, especially if they have some strategic withdrawals from their accounts. High earners end up with a lower overall tax burden. And then there's Social Security. The system is designed to replace a higher percentage of income for lower earners, but for high earners, it replaces much less, and that means that they have to rely on more in personal savings, but they don't necessarily need as high of a replacement rate. And plus, many high-income households enter retirement with some of the biggest financial milestones already checked off. So mortgages are paid off in many cases, kids' education is funded, and all of those kind of things, and that just naturally reduces their income needs. And I suppose another factor would be lifestyle spending. While lower and middle income households may need to maintain or even increase their spending, higher earners often reach a point of equilibrium where their spending starts to level off. And then finally, they just have more flexibility in how they spend, and they can adjust it based on market performance or some other factors, which means they don't necessarily have to have as much in fixed income. So it's not about spending less in retirement. It's about those people needing less in guaranteed income to be able to maintain their lifestyle. But what I do find interesting about all this data is how it completely flips conventional wisdom on its head for a large segment of retirees. For years, we've all heard that you should plan to replace 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income. But when you actually look at the numbers, that rule only applies to those earning $150,000 or more. For anyone earning less than that, the replacement rate is actually higher. And this is exactly why retirement planning is so personal. There's no one-size-fits-all rule, and I'm convinced that everyone needs a plan. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to hire a financial planner, but at the very least, you should start using a tool like Bolden a few years before retirement to get a clear picture of where you stand. All right, so I told you that if you stuck around to the end, I'd tell you about a brand new YouTube channel I'm launching. Well, here it is. We're bringing the Big Picture Retirement Podcast to video. Now, if you're not familiar, this has been an audio-only podcast since 2017. I co-host the show with John Ross, an elder law attorney, and together we spent the last 8 years diving into the tax, legal, and financial side of retirement planning. But now we're turning on the cameras, and it's going to be a completely different experience than this channel. This isn't your typical interview or where we're talking to the camera. It's a real in-depth conversation between two professionals who aren't afraid to get into the weeds on topics that really matter for retirement. And I'm going to drop a link to that channel below, so be sure to go check it out and hit that subscribe button while you're there. Thanks for watching.